actually have waves in the ocean floor.
Common animals here. Weedropopods and krill are called zooplankton. You'd never find a place more diverse than my childhood home. A teaspoon of seawater can contain more than a million eggs, and only a few of us survive. During the day, I'd return to the darkness where I'd join my bizarre. Just one way to get food. I was part of the largest daily.
Some big animals, small animals, some nice, some dangerous sharks, whales, all that stuff. They need to be protected from humanity.
Edible gold. Phytoplankton are the base for the largest food web in the world. Single-celled life that transforms sunlight and carbon dioxide inspired the movie Aliens. Tiny bit bristles, but prefer.
You could say, hey, I know planet Earth, I live here. You don't know Earth.
Larger prey like salps.
Say nothing could live there, but when we look in detail, even there, instead we find more life and diversity and density than the tropical rainforest.
With two sets of eyes, this female prowls.
Contact with a soft-bodied creature.
Always have to have sunlight to get life going. There's bits
of the deep sea. With the sub.
So in one instance, in one peek out the window of the sub, we discover something that revolutionizes the way we think about life on Earth.
And comb jellies that beat cilia like rainbowed eyelashes.
There's big animals down there too, some that look familiar. That guy's called Dumbo.
Continuously, and have for the last 4 billion years. The portion is partly driven by the input from heat below and by other processes. This is the system, this is the crucible out of which life on the planet came, and it's now time for us to understand it.
This shows that the effect of the sun's variations on climate is overwhelmed by the increasing greenhouse gases, mainly from burning fossil fuels. Global temperature, atmospheric CO2, and sea level were derived from ocean cores and Antarctic ice cores.
I have given, I'm given a show,
Another 2.5 billion people on the planet.
I don't want to raise. Course is the North Polar ice cap.
Sulfuric acid particles, sulfates.
28 years ago, in the last 28 years. Here's what happened last fall that was equivalent to this much. Not as permanent ice, as thin ice. Could be completely gone in summer in as little as 5 years.
Into the upper atmosphere, the stratosphere, where they'd reflect away sunlight and cool the planet.
The amount of moderate to severe snow melting of an area equivalent to the size of California.
The rate of growth of our emissions is accelerating, and it's accelerating even faster than what we thought was the worst case just a few years back.
A tale of two planets. Earth and Venus are exactly the same size, same amount of carbon. The difference is our temperature is 59 degrees on average. On Venus, it's 855. It's not because Venus is slightly closer to the sun.
It was done not by us, not by me, but by nature.
3 times hotter than Mercury, which is right next to the sun. Global warming pollution put into the atmosphere, thickening this, is trapping more of the outgoing infrared. Then you would expect it to be warmer here and cooler here. Here is the lower atmosphere.
Some about carbon sink, generating oxygen.
Here is the stratosphere, cooler.
Protecting watersheds. And in 19...
Global warming is still listed at near the bottom. What is missing is a sense of urgency.
Years protected 300, but it only increased from 0.6 of 1% protected globally. Protected areas do, but it takes a long time to restore 50-year-old rockfish or monkfish, shark-year-old cows or chickens.
From laughs to tears, this is one of the old tobacco commercials. Gasoline consumption in all of these countries, and us. The developing countries are now following us. Their cumulative emissions this year are the equivalent of where we were in 1965, and they're catching up.
Natural But the problems are more obvious.
60s, 70s, 80s, 90s.
Sure, because this is poisonous water, because it's so deep it would crush the Titanic the same way you crush an empty cup inside your hand. We were sure there'd be no life there at all.
Put a price on carbon. We need a CO2 tax, revenue neutral, to replace taxation on employment in the poor countries. Concentrating solar renewable energy plants linked to supply all of the electrical power to Europe from developing countries. This is not pie in the sky. We need to do it for our own economy. The old model is not working. Junkies find veins in their toes when the ones in their arms and their legs collapse. Here are just a few of the investments that I personally think make sense. I have a stake in these, so I'll have a disclaimer there. But geothermal, concentrating solar, advanced photovoltaics, efficiency, and conservation. You've seen this slide before, but there's a change. The only two countries that didn't ratify, now there's only one, to change Australia's position on Kyoto. Horrible drought. This is Lake Lanier. Individual heroism, hero generation. This was another hero generation. We have the capacity, so commonplace that it becomes banal or routine. We have the capacity. Sometimes I hear people respond to the disturbing fact.
Plans on global warming?
We have sclerosis. Have a moratorium on it. We shouldn't have any new coal-fired generating plants that aren't.
Operations are in red. In my lifetime, imagine 90% of the big fish have been killed. Most of the turtles, sharks, tunas, and whales. 10% of the big fish still remain. There's still some blue whales. There's still some krill in Antarctica. There are a few oysters in Chesapeake Bay. Half the coral reefs are still in pretty good shape.
Complexity here. This is only one variable. If you can see the complexity, you can see how tiny little eddies.
See the thing is photograph in the
and large eddies and the motion.
We find life whenever we
where it is at the waterline. Here it begins to roll and the boat is.
This is just sea surface temperature, but it's
great. This guy,
but it's immensely complicated. Now layer in the other 200 or 300 processes that are all.
Some of these snare their prey with sticky tentacles, while others just take a bite out of their cousins. And siphonophores that catch prey with toxic fishing lures. But my favorite would have to be the crustacean phronema. Prey in hand, she performs one of the strangest behaviors in the entire animal kingdom. With body parts from her victims, she delicately assembles a barrel-like home, feeding her young until they can drift off and survive on their own. Best of all, they make the perfect snack for a small fish like me.